in the US, at least 2 lawsuits were filed on Monday against President Donald Trump's plan to dismantle the Education Department. The National Education Association, the country's largest union, and the NAACP, the country's oldest civil rights organisation, are suing with parent advocates. They claim Trump overstepped his constitutional authority. Meanwhile, the American Federation of Teachers and several school districts filed separately, asking a judge to block the order. This comes just days after Trump signed an executive order to close the $220 billion agency and return, quote, authority over education to the states. Trump has already ordered student loans and special education services for children with disabilities to be transferred to other federal agencies. And of course, there are many areas that the dismantling of the Department of Education would affect, and one of those is student loans. I'm joined now by Peter Cunningham. He's a former Assistant Secretary for Communications and Outreach in the US Department of Education. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us this evening. Consumer advocates say these changes could not come at a worse time for federal student loan borrowers. What does this all mean for the more than 40 million Americans who hold federal student loans?
I think no one knows what it means, and that's part of the problem. As you said, 40 million people, $1.6 trillion. Those loans are managed by the Department of Education. They're now going to the Small Business Administration, which is not actually built to handle those loans. The Small Business Administration uses banks to process loans. So that means they're probably going to use banks to process these loans. And if they do that, it'll get more expensive because banks don't work for free. And it'll be interesting to see if it ends up actually costing a lot more. It'll also be interesting to see if they end up cutting off a lot of people who would otherwise qualify for loans, because banks have different standards.
Right. Okay. So does this essentially, if it is going to the banks, does that mean that they will be essentially privatising these student loans, and there'll be money to be made off this process? And how will that affect the affordability and accessibility of student loans across the board?
Well, again, different people will be making decisions about them, and they may bring different approaches to who they want to lend money to and for what purpose and what the interest rates will be. And, right now you have federal government guaranteeing those loans. Is the federal government still going to guarantee them? Is the banks going to turn down people who might otherwise be given loans right now under the current system? And it's just so reckless. I mean, you heard people talking about the fear. Nobody's explained anything. It hasn't been done with any thought. It hasn't been done with, all the expertise in the department is just being tossed out the window. I mean, this department has been built for 45 years. And by the way, since this department came to existence in 1979, the percentage of people in America with college degrees has doubled. And the high school graduation rate has gone up about 30 points, from about 60% to 90%. So there are some real risks here. And of course, you heard from people with disabilities talking about there's people of children with disabilities talking about their kids. And once you mess with parents of students with disabilities, you're really going to get a backlash. And I really predict that people are going to be very upset about this. They've made it clear, actually, that they want a lot of this money to just be spent on vouchers, to go in block grants back to states and let the states give it to districts to use it for vouchers, so that the money would end up in private schools.
So what are some of the various ways that individual states might manage this, do you think? And how will it impact not just university students, but elementary, middle school, high school students? What will it mean for, cultural diversity, equity and opportunity across the board?
Well, again, those are issues that they've decided they don't care about. They don't care about cultural diversity. They don't care about equity. They don't care about inclusion. They made it very clear that they want the opposite. They want exclusion. They want inequity. They don't want diversity. They want conformity. And so I think that the whole point of education is to lift us all, to give us, all of us, a bigger stake in the economic pie that we have, to create opportunities for people. And we've worked so hard for decades. Every president before Trump has recognized that education was a matter of national interest. You go back to Eisenhower pushing STEM education because the Russians had beaten us into space. And you go back to Reagan releasing A Nation at Risk, a seminal report that got the whole country moving towards education reform. Both of the Bushes, Nixon, he signed IDEA. Ford, he signed Pell Grants. All of these presidents understood this is a matter of national interest. And this president comes along and just decides that it's not a matter of national interest. Let's just give it all back to the states, which is so deceptive because states already control 90% of education. Okay, the federal government does not set standards. They don't choose curriculum. They don't train teachers. They don't run schools. All they really do is provide resources for vulnerable children. And right now, parents of vulnerable children are really worried that those resources are going to go away and they'll be shifted to some other priorities that this administration has.
Something that the Biden administration tried to do, or did, was to approve more than $188 billion in student loan forgivenesses. That's affected 5.3 million borrowers. What will these, policies of Trump's do in terms of what will it mean for those who are hoping to be debt-free or at least have their debt minimized?
Well, again, nobody knows, but there are a lot of people who are really starting out life way behind because they have too much debt, and that needs to be addressed. But the way to address it is not to just hand it to the Small Business Administration, let them figure it out, or hand it over to some private banks. The way to address it is to really understand what people need, how to balance the books here, and how to get that money into the schools and into the hands of kids who need it, who want to go to college. And that's not what they're doing at all. I don't think they care about that. I think all they want to do is, I think they really want to control the money so that they control the universities and force them to adopt their agenda. You saw that happen at Columbia University in the last couple of weeks. I think they want to do that even more. And the student loan program is a lever that will give him even more power to force universities to do what he wants.
I wish we had more time, Peter. I really appreciate your insights tonight. Really interesting. Peter Cunningham there for us.